Hey dudes, I just thought I'd record a quick video for you. I'm not even sure if it's working, to be honest with you. But I thought I'd record a quick video for you and just let you know that this is actually going to be a regular occurrence on this channel now. This YouTube video that you're about to watch is basically ripped straight from my live stream of me basically reacting to Mr. Nightmare videos. I've watched these years and years ago, but then I thought while I was live, I just thought, oh, let's just hang out and all just kind of chill. But then, you know, it turned out to be really fun actually. And I thought it would be kind of cool if from the future, I start making Mr. Nightmare reaction videos, but specifically for YouTube. So if you aren't watching my Twitch and you're just watching this video, that's going to be regular from now on. But yeah, I'm not going to talk too much. Enjoy the video. Let's go.
When me and my troublemaking friends were 13 years old, one of the many rowdy and mischievous things we would do would be Saturday night ding-dong ditch sessions. 10 years ago, we all lived on the same block in a typical suburban neighborhood. At the time, there were a lot less houses and more woods though. I'm going to make up names for my friends for the case of this story. There was Mark, James, and Matt. Either Mark or James were usually the ones to go up to the houses and ring the bells. Matt and I, on the other hand, would usually find hiding spots right away. We hit about 5 or 6 houses. I remember all of the men who answered the doors gave pretty much the same reactions. They'd step out onto the stoop, one or two would yell something, and then they'd walk back inside. For a couple of houses, we'd ring the bell again for a better reaction. One guy yelled he was calling the cops the second time, so when he shut his door, we all booked it down the street and went to the next block over.
Real stories, by the way.
As I mentioned, 10 years ago in this neighborhood, there were patches of wood sitting where houses sit today.
From their point of view.
On the next block over, there were a few patches of wood surrounding some of the houses, and the houses on this block seemed to be more unkempt. The first house on the block was across the street from a patch of woods, which made for a perfect hiding spot. The house was kind of run down looking, tall grass, a ratty old car with a cover on it in the driveway, and overall just a small house. Mark went up to ring the bell. He barely had time to make it across the street before the door opened. It was another man to answer the door. This guy really big, about 6 foot and stocky build. Unlike the others, he was furious immediately. He walked around his whole front yard checking the bushes, yelling threats. We all laughed as we always did. Eventually, he finally went back inside. Mark waited a few minutes, checked the windows, and then ran back up the stoop to ring the bell again. I didn't envy him with this house. I would not be bold enough to ring that man's bell again. Mark knew he probably didn't have as much time, so he ran to the side of the house and out of sight. The door opened much quicker this time, and this time the man came out with a rifle in his hand. We all looked at each other, simultaneously going, "Oh shit," under our breath. The man checked all the places he checked before, and then a few extra places this time, like behind his car, behind a couple trees, and then he walked to the center of his lawn and just stood there, as if he were thinking. He looked around, and then his head stopped as he was facing us in the woods.
Stream, mate.
Me, Matt, and James looked at each other. We ducked lower in hopes that he didn't see us. After 10 seconds of staring in our direction, the man went back into his home.
So he's seen them?
Then, we saw him appear at his front window, standing still like a statue, looking in our direction in the woods once again. We saw Mark creeping back over to the man's front door, but there was nothing we could do. We were too afraid to move or yell anything. Mark rang the bell once again and ran for it. The man didn't move though, at least not for another minute. Then he turned and walked away from the window. We didn't see Mark again, but we were still too nervous to move or say anything. The next thing I remember, we heard Mark's voice from across the street yelling, "Run." We didn't understand until we heard someone running up from behind us, realizing upon turning our heads that it was the man from across the street with his rifle in hand, pointed at us. We ran like little prey from a predator to Mark, who was waiting for us across the street. We ran for blocks until we were sure we lost him. Mark explained that he yelled when he saw the man sneaking across the street into the patch of woods with his gun. We didn't report him or any of what happened. We just told a few friends and that was it. Luckily the house was many blocks from us, so we never really had to pass it again.
Thank God. Mark's a fucking idiot. I know, right? Stupid Mark, I know. Alright guys, shh, just enjoy.
I lived in a house from hell for a couple of weeks. I was a college student, and my parents were paying for a house for me to live in. I'm spoiled, I know. Well, the house was modest, nothing fancy.
No, so here's the thing, Aaron. Pause the video. Here's the thing, right? These are real, but then they are rewritten and told from the point of view of the person who experienced them. So they're actually real.
So you're huge, and I was happy with it. Well, for the first few days anyway. Then things quickly started getting strange. On a rainy Saturday with nothing to do, I was watching TV for a few hours. That was when I heard a scrape on my living room floor. I looked around the room thinking an animal got into the house or something. I sat back down and resumed watching TV. That was the first weird occurrence. The rain continued throughout the rest of the day and into the night, which made for an excuse to not go out. I stayed in watching more TV in the living room. I perked up when I thought I heard something from the kitchen. Laughably, I took a pillow with me as, I guess, some sort of weapon, and walked over to the kitchen doorway. There, in the middle of the dark kitchen, was a box of Cheerios on the floor, spilling out hundreds of the tiny O's. I had no idea how that could have happened. Nevertheless, I dropped the pillow and began cleaning up the Cheerios off the floor.
Stupid mom.
As I was doing so, I heard a creak, like the sound weak areas of a wood floor make when someone steps on them. It was by the kitchen table.
Oh no.
I looked up, but nobody was there. I knew I was going crazy now. Every little sound must have been making me paranoid. I cleaned the Cheerios and went back to watching TV. The thunder outside was getting louder as the bulk of the storm seemed to be passing overhead. Yet I found it to be strangely relaxing.
Big boots, you'll be alright, my friend.
That was the last thing I remember,
stream.
appreciating the sound of the storm outside, before waking up from what seemed to be an hour-long doze. The TV was still on, but that wasn't what woke me. I remember believing I woke up to a bang or thud from downstairs.
Bang or thud.
Regardless, I turned off the TV and marched upstairs to bed.
Thank you for the follow, my friend.
The next day was normal, as was the day after that. It wasn't until the next gray, rainy day that strange things started happening again. I woke up in my bed that morning feeling like I had been drinking all night the night before. I felt sicker than I'd ever felt with any hangover before. I didn't do much walking around that day. The gloomy dark weather only made me more bedridden. I left the TV in my bedroom on all day just as background noise, with a garbage pail by my side in case I had to puke. At midday, I muted the TV after hearing sounds coming from above me.
Holy shit, could you imagine?
The attic. The attic door was actually in my bedroom, and most of the attic was built over that bedroom. It wasn't just one thud I heard, it was 3 or 4.
3 or 4, bro.
I managed to get out of bed, despite the fact that every time I moved, I wanted to puke. I pulled the string to the attic door down, took one of my old baseball bats with me, and climbed up the steps.
He climbed up,
I pulled the light switch down to light up the attic. There were a few old boxes that must have belonged to the previous owners scattered about, but I couldn't see any living things to produce those noises.
Imagine going to the attic.
I climbed back down quickly because I was kind of scared of that attic. There were no more noises. Until that night.
He went to
I
sleep.
woke up to, at first, what I thought was thunder, still feeling a bit sick. The familiar sound of a thud from up in the attic gave me chills. I pulled the string to the attic door back down, took my baseball bat once again, and climbed up the stairs. I made myself angry and screamed in the most intimidating voice I could. But before I could turn the light on, I heard the sound of a child giggling in the pitch-black attic. Words cannot describe the feeling of weightlessness, the feeling of my insides dropping inside of my body, the fear that I felt. The word fear is not enough to describe what I felt at that moment. I was out of that house so fast I don't even remember running. I called my dad in the cold rain and asked him to pick me up. I explained everything the best I could. My parents saw how emotional I was about this, and in a weird sense, I think they believed me. I packed all of my things up with my parents the next day and moved back home. To this day, I'm convinced what I experienced in that house was completely paranormal.
Oh man. Oh, poor guy.
Here we go.
Holy shit.
It was Christmas Eve
Alright,
of 2015.
story 2.
I had recently gotten a new job as a psychiatric nurse, but I had to start with the overnight shifts, and that included Christmas
This is a
Eve
woman,
night, which was
alright.
a Thursday. Well, technically it was a Friday by the time I arrived to work.
Wink, wink.
But anyway, most of my shifts are slow and boring, with a lot of sitting around a computer for most of the night, since most of the patients are asleep during the hours that I was there.
Makes sense.
Occasionally I'd have to check on patients and observe their behavior, or deal with patients who would become restless in the middle of the night. Dealing with so many people with mental disabilities at once
night,
was
Gary.
a lot
Have
to
a good
take in
night,
at
man.
first, but the Christmas
pause for a
decorations
second.
scattered throughout the building brought a little extra cheer to the place. At night, the main lights in the hallways go out and a dim set of lights turn on.
Yep.
These dim lights mixed with the Christmas lights that had been hung up all over the place created a more relaxed, comfortable setting. There was one particular patient who had been creeping me out.
Thank you, Aaron.
Her name was Abatha. She was an old, sickly lady with severe schizophrenia. She oftentimes
Schizophrenia.
would mumble to herself
Scary.
incomprehensible things, and sometimes she'd say things out loud that I'd assume were directed at me, but she'd just be talking to herself.
Yep. I've
It was
experienced
about
that.
3 in the morning when I went to go check on Abatha, who had been awake the whole night.
So, okay, so
I
quick
came
story.
in and asked if she needed anything.
So just from what I've noticed so far, this lady actually works at the aged care center, which also has some people with some mental disabilities. So there's this one particular lady who has a mental disability, and she tends to check on her quite often. All right, let's go. Schizophrenia. It's a very, very dangerous person to deal with. They can be beautiful people, but they can also be terrible people at the same time. It's crazy.
And she just looked at me with a horrific smile and laughed. It gave me chills because I felt like I was witnessing something from a scary movie. She looked away from me and started muttering something. I didn't understand most of it, but the words that did pop out to me were, "Check the bathroom." I asked her to repeat herself, but
Check
she
the
didn't
bathroom,
acknowledge
dude.
me. She just turned to her side and rested her head on the pillow. I tried to get her to confirm she wanted me to check the bathroom, but she wouldn't answer now. So
She's
I checked the
scared.
bathroom across from her bed in her room,
Whoa.
and as I expected, there was nothing out of the ordinary. I left her room and went back to my desk in the hall. Then I looked at the bathroom door across from my desk. My curiosity got the better of me, so I went into the bathroom, but the lights
Oh, I'm
wouldn't
getting
turn
chills.
on. I stood by the
The light
doorway
won't turn
listening
on.
for a moment, and I
Listening.
heard breathing and then a click sound from one of the stalls.
Oh no, I
I
couldn't.
went to get the door stopper from behind the desk and wedged it under the bathroom door so that the light from the hall would let me see at least a little bit into the bathroom. I got on my knees and checked under the stalls from a distance. No feet could be seen in either of the stalls, though.
Fuck.
One stall of the 2 had its door shut, though.
Oh fuck.
I went up to it and stuck my eye through the crack of the door.
No.
It was really dark, but I felt like I could see something at the back of the stall. I got back down on my knees to look under the door.
Close your eyes, guys.
But
Close
when I
your eyes.
did, I couldn't see what I thought I just saw. I got back up and took one more look through the crack of the door, and there was someone's face right on the other side, peeking through the crack just as I was.
Oh fuck.
I almost fell to the floor in fright, but managed to run to the door and slam it shut. I grabbed the key from the desk and locked the bathroom door. I told another nurse that there was someone in the bathroom, but when we checked together, not only did the lights now work, but the stalls were both open and no one was inside either of them. A more relaxed, comfortable setting. There was one particular patient who had been creeping
Behind
me
you,
out.
Ryan? No.
Her name was Abatha. She was an old, sickly lady with severe schizophrenia.
I still
She
checked.
oftentimes would mumble to herself incomprehensible things, and sometimes she'd say things out loud that I'd assume were directed at me, but she'd just be talking to herself. It was about 3 in the morning when I went to go check on Abatha, who had been awake the whole night. I came in and asked if she needed anything, and she just looked at me with a horrific smile and laughed. It gave me chills because I felt like I was witnessing something from a scary movie. She looked away from me and started muttering something. I didn't understand most of it, but the words that did pop out to me were, "Check the bathroom." I asked her to repeat herself,
Ah, we
but
did
she
see
didn't
this part.
acknowledge
Sorry, my
me.
bad.
She just turned to her side and rested her head on the pillow. I tried to get her to come. I went to get the door stopper from behind the desk and what got the better of me, so I went into the bathroom, but the lights wouldn't turn on. I stood by the doorway listening for a moment, and I heard breathing and then a click sound
Yeah,
from
we
one of the
already
stalls.
listened to this. My bad. Sorry.
I went to get the door seen in either of the stalls, though. Down on my knees to look under the door. But when I did, I couldn't see what I thought I just saw.
Terrifying, dude. This is amazing.
I got back up and took one
Love you
more look
guys.
through the crack of the door, and there was someone's
Please don't let me
face
die.
right on the other side, peeking through the crack just as I was. I almost fell to the floor in fright, but managed to run to the door and slam it shut. I grabbed the key from the desk and locked the bathroom door. I told another nurse that there was someone in the bathroom, but when we checked together, not only did the lights now work, but the stalls were both open, and no one was inside either of them.
They were empty all of a sudden, dude.
It was impossible for someone to have left the room. I locked the door. That night, before my shift ended, I tried to question Abatha about what was in the bathroom, but she wouldn't answer me.
She wouldn't answer, dude.
Just as I gave up and walked to the door with my jacket on, I heard her say, "Merry Christmas."
Merry Christmas. What?
I turned and saw her giving me a smile. Only the smile didn't give me a good feeling.
Dude,
There
shut
was
up,
something
J-Rock.
unsettling about it. I had to turn and leave. I had to work with Abatha for a few more weeks before she was transferred to another center for hospice care. To this day, I still feel there was a connection between Abatha and whatever I saw in that bathroom.
Definitely.
It's
dude.
literally just one of those stories I just can't even try to understand or rationalize, but it still haunts me.
Is that it? Holy fuck, dude. So this... Oh, story 3. So this person works in a hospital, a mental disability hospital. There's a lady with schizophrenia who says there's someone in the bathroom and to check it. He walks in there, he sees nobody, but there's one stall that's closed. He checks it. He sees nothing under the stall, but as soon as he looks through the crack, there's someone looking back at him. He freaks out, he falls to the ground, he looks back. Nothing. Oh, poor bastard, dude. Holy shit. Alright, new one. Story 1. Okay,
My
3
house
stories
doesn't
this
have a
stream.
basement, and a lot of houses that don't have basements have crawl spaces instead, which are basically a layer of space under the lower level of a house with a height of no more than about 5 feet, usually used for storage. It started on a night like any other.
We could
I
probably do
had
another
classes
after
the
this.
next morning, so I had to be in bed early. My room is on the first floor, and the crawl space is right below my room. After turning off the TV at like 11,
Oh, straight away, he's got a crawl space, not a basement.
I started
It's a
hearing
tiny
noises
basement.
below me. Actually, it sounded like it was coming from right under my
Under
bed.
his floor, dude.
My parents and brother were all asleep by now, so calling for any of their attention would be a little obnoxious at this point. It took a little courage, but I got on the carpet on my knees and looked under the bed, hoping I wouldn't see a rodent or any other kind of creature. There was nothing, though, so I got back into bed. As I got back into bed, though, the sound started up again.
No way. Oh, I can't do it, dude.
It was kind of a rough push and pull kind of sound. It sounded like something being done deliberately. I once again got on my knees on the side of the bed and looked underneath. There was definitely nothing under there, though. Oddly enough, every time I got out of bed, the sound stopped. I went to get my dad, and he took a look under the bed too. Figures there were no sounds now, though. He told me he'd check the crawl space the next day to see if one of the pipes were
fuck
leaking or
that.
something. I didn't even think of it being something in the crawl space. The rest of that night it was quiet, so I fell asleep with ease. When I got home from class the next day, I spotted something sticking out from under my bed. I pulled it out,
Welcome
and
back,
it was a
bro.
bag full of old papers from like elementary school. I planned on asking my mom why she would put that in my room, but I figured I'd just throw it back down in the crawl space and forget about it. Our crawl space has its entry door
Welcome back,
inside of
Gamer
our
boy.
garage, and my dad tends to leave the garage door open a lot during the
We
summer
got a lot
months.
going on right now.
This was so he could work in there without having the lights on while also getting some fresh air. Sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up to sounds coming from below my room. Not my bed this
You scared the shit out of me, babe. You scared the shit out of me. We're listening to horror stories and you just came into my room. Fuck. Stream, I'll be right back. 1 second. Oh my god.
This time, but for some reason the sounds were especially clear this night.
Okay.
I knew now something had to be in the crawl space. After turning on my bedside lamp, I ran to get my dad out from bed, who was a bit irritated that I'd woken him up.
A second
He
time.
led me down to the garage and to the crawl space door. He opened the door and grabbed the flashlight that hung next to the door.
No, he didn't.
As we looked inside of the crawl space, however, we noticed something strange.
Oh, fucking
Light.
hell.
Across the other side of the area. Light was
That's
seeping
probably a
in
real
from
photo.
above. But that made no sense.
Oh my
There
God.
weren't supposed to be any holes in the floor.
No, what?
My dad crouch walked his way to the hole. And then he screamed.
Oh my god. I
Hearing
can't
my
do it.
dad scream with such fear and horror was the most disturbing thing I'd ever witnessed.
Come on,
I didn't know
dude.
what he saw, but he screamed at me to open the garage door and get out of the house.
Something was fucked up.
I listened without asking questions. I stood in the driveway waiting. I heard
My
a
whole
commotion
body,
inside
dude.
of the house,
My whole
including
body.
a scream from my mom. 5 minutes later, my dad and older brother came outside, holding a stranger in their grips.
What?
5 minutes later, a police car pulled up to the house, and neighbors soon started coming outside to see what the commotion was. Let me explain what happened. When my father got to that hole in the ceiling of the crawl space, he realized it was a giant hole cut open right under my bed, and as he looked through it, he saw a masked man looking down at him. As my dad grabbed at the man's arms through the hole, he screamed for my older brother's help, who luckily came to my dad's aid. Without him, my dad could have easily been killed, because that man was carrying a handgun.
Oh my god. Oh my god, dude. Story 2. Oh my god. I don't know if I can do it, guys. I don't know if I
When
can
I was
do it.
21, still living in my parents' house, my
I
bedroom
am
was
back.
actually
Sounds
supposed to be
good.
considered an extra room.
I'm back too.
It wasn't built with the intention of being a bedroom, more so a kind of
It's
downstairs
not fake,
storage
Aaron.
room.
Most of these are actually
However,
true.
I was the youngest, so I got the worst room. My 2 older brothers had
A lot of
already
them were
moved out
proven
by
real.
this point, and I was finishing up with college.
He went through a
It
phase
was
of people
winter break,
faking,
however. My dad was
accused
on a
them of being
business
fake,
trip,
but
and
it's
my
not.
mom was in another state with friends.
You can search it up.
They're the kind of
His
parents
name's
who you
Mr.
never
Nine,
see
yeah.
around, and they've been like that since we were kids. My room happens to attach to the crawl space of our house. There's a little pull-off door in the wall.
Some
When I
photos
was
are real
little, my
too.
brothers always teased me and said there were aliens or monsters in the crawl space. Sometimes as a kid, I'd get scared by the littlest of noises coming from inside the wall next to my bed.
Same.
Eventually, I outgrew that fear, obviously.
Yeah.
I was chilling in my room, just trying to finish up all the work for my classes, when I heard some muffled noise coming from the crawl space, like literally beyond the wall right next to my bed.
Fuck crawl spaces. Fuck horror. Fuck this.
It wasn't
Broke
any
crawl
kind of
spaces, man.
thumping or tapping or anything. It just sounded like some kind of sound that would come from a person's mouth.
Okay.
Of course, my heart started racing as I started freaking out over it.
Fair enough.
Given that I was home alone, I couldn't just call for my huge, intimidating dad to go in there. So I opened the door to the crawl space, and with my phone's flashlight, just aimed it in every direction in the crawl space while still standing by the doorway.
Bro, fuck that.
I wasn't sure exactly what I was looking for,
See, that's
but
probably
after
a
not
real
being
photo
able to
of it
see
right
anything or anyone from the doorway,
I don't know.
I contemplated going deeper into the crawl space. But just then, there was a voice.
Was I making sense there? Say, sometimes I talk too much, but let me tell you something right now.
After nearly having a heart attack, I realized it was just one of those old talking Bubba toys. I didn't know what could have caused it to go off and start speaking though. I was guessing it was deep in some old bag of
Alright, guys,
toys
we're all
somewhere.
gonna close our
Something
eyes in
was
a
putting
second here,
pressure on the
okay? You
trigger
ready?
button. I waited by the door for the
Alright, we
talking
want to
to
really
stop, and when
feel
it
what's
finally
going on
did,
here.
I
Alright,
shut
close
the
your
attic
eyes,
door
guys.
again and got back in
Let's
my bed.
listen. Close your eyes right now.
When the time came for me to go to sleep,
just listen.
I turned off my laptop
He's gonna
and the
go to
light
sleep.
and
He's
rolled
turned
on
off
my
his laptop
side.
and his light. He's
It
rolling on
wasn't
his
long
side.
after that I heard the talking Bubba go off again inside the crawl space.
He heard it again.
Now that I knew what the sound was, it seemed much clearer. This was the last straw now. I had to get that toy out from whatever bag it was sitting in, or it would probably be going off all night. I went back to the crawl space door, and this time actually went inside. I followed the sounds of the toy's voice, and as I got to the big brown paper bag that seemed to be containing it, I saw 2 arms come out from the dark.
Oh, fuck.
2 arms that were stretched out forward.
Look at the picture right
and there
now,
was
guys.
a horrifying, deep scream that accompanied them.
Close your eyes again.
I was being lunged at. I screamed as I ran to the crawl space door and slammed it shut. It had a lock on it, thank God. couple seconds after locking the door, there were bangs on the door that consistently came about every 2 seconds. The door didn't show any signs of giving, but I didn't stick around to find out if it would. I was upstairs already on the phone with the police, but I did notice the banging stopped downstairs. The police told me to wait either inside a locked room or outside in a safe place like a car or a neighbor's house. I didn't want to be in the house anymore until the cops arrived, so I took the spare keys to my car from the key ring and went to sit in my car. I had a view of the back section of my house from the street, however, and noticed a door on the side of our house was open.
No.
It was the outside crawl space door.
What?
It was completely wide open. It suddenly makes sense how there could be someone in there. The outside door must have been left unlocked by my dad by mistake. I sat in my car telling 911 to hurry up before the intruder could escape. I didn't see anyone leave through the door, but for all I knew, they already had left. The cop car finally came roaring down the road with its lights on and stopped in front of my house. I got out of the car and called at him to follow me to the door. I pointed and said, "In there," and he went inside with his flashlight. I peeked my head in there the whole time, helping out with the flashlight too. I made sure he didn't miss anything. I even suggested that he search any big boxes or bags, and he did. The officer was surprisingly patient and polite towards my demands given the situation. He came out after a few minutes of searching and assured me the crawl space was empty. Whoever was in there left in a hurry. The crawl space door could only be locked with a key or from the inside, so I asked the officer to wait there while I went inside and locked the door from the inside.
Outside crawl space entry.
As I was in the crawl space again, alone, I couldn't help but shake the feeling that I was being watched as I hurried back to my room to lock that door as well.
Oh no, motherfucker, no.
The officer left a few minutes after, and I tried to get to sleep, but I couldn't. I was awake all night until the sun came up, just worrying about someone still being in that crawl space. Luckily, no one ever broke into it again, but I guess I wouldn't call it breaking in, since the door was unlocked.
Holy shit, that's the story. Holy fuck, bro. Someone was in his
It was
fucking
2016.
room. In
I
his
just signed a lease to move
scroll
into my
space,
first house
dude.
alone.
Holy
It was a fixer-upper starter home for sure, but the neighborhood wasn't bad at all.
Let's go another